Hello, everyone. I'm Sam,
I'm Kaitlyn.
And I'm Mo.
and this is Team Get Ovary It.
We're an all-female team participating in the greatest motoring adventure on the planet, the Mongol Rally.
We'll be driving 10,000 miles across mountains, deserts, and unknown terrain.
And along the way, we hope to spread our feminist and environmental ideals.
Join us here as we share our stories, thoughts, and interviews as we get ready for the Mongol Rally 2021.
Don't you mean 2022?
Shit!
Hi!
Welcome back.
Today we are going to take a dive into history and talk about one of the great motor races of the past.
It's no secret that the main purpose for Get Ovary It is to raise funds and awareness for our attempt at the Mongol Rally 2022, maybe?
Question
Pending? Question mark, yeah. But today the Mongol Rally, which begins in Prague or somewhere in Europe in general, wherever you start from, and ends in the Asian part of Russia, previously Mongolia, is the most ambitious motoring race on the planet. Cars have certainly changed a lot in the past 120 or so years, but humans have not. And way back in 1908, some amazing fellows had hatched up a plan to race from New York in America to Paris in France.
Of course, most of you can see the issue right away. The huge body of water that separates the two cities called the Atlantic Ocean. It wouldn't be very interesting if the competitors simply put their cars on boats and then drove a few hundred miles through France to reach Paris. So, what did they decide to do? They decided to go the other way. Yep. The route they drew would take them across the United States, into Canada, to Alaska, over a much smaller body of water, the Bering Strait, across Siberia, through Europe, and finally to Paris. By the way, the Bering Strait no longer freezes over, so you can't drive over that sucker either. Haha.
Yeah. Global warming, climate
Yay.
change. So, what made the journey even more insane is that in 1908, most of the roadways we know and use today hadn't even been thought of yet. Cars were still rare. There were only about 2.24 cars per 1,000 people in the US compared to about 833 cars per 1,000 people today. And the infrastructure to support vehicles simply wasn't needed yet. So, why the race?
Right? Why
Uh,
put yourself through the misery of driving over bumpy, maybe kind of sort of roads for hours on
because we
end?
can.
Because we
Because
can.
Mo.
Well, allegedly, it all began in 1907 with the Peking or Beijing Paris race put on by the French embassy in Peking, China, and sponsored by the French newspaper Le Matin.
Oh, very good.
Matin?
Le matin.
Le Matin.
It means the morning. Le matin.
An article written by the newspaper advertising the event read, "What needs to be proved today is that as long as man has a car, he can do anything and go anywhere. Is there anyone who will undertake the travel this summer from Peking to Paris by automobile?" The race was won by Italian Prince Scipione Borghese, who received some champagne for his troubles. Some of the other racers barely finished with their lives still intact. The contestants had to travel up ravines, navigate through quicksand, and cross bridges that were not designed for vehicles. All in all, it was a very dangerous thing to attempt. Naturally, the following year, Lamartine devised an even crazier race to collaborate with the New York Times, New York to Paris.
Wow. We never learn. So, Le matin.
No.
Nah.
We just up the stakes, up the ante. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Le Matin called the race Le Tour du Pôle, which means the tour around the pole, and announced a $1,000 prize to the winner, which would be about $30,000 in today's money.
Not bad.
Another $1,000, yeah, not bad. Another $1,000 would be awarded to whomever could carry the American flag throughout the entire race.
Nice.
America, seriously,
Right?
America, yeah. So the race attracted international attention. Yeah. And there were teams from France, Italy, and Germany, in addition to those from the United States. Some of the participants didn't even know how to drive at the beginning of the race and had to learn on the fly, or rather, on the drive, as it were.
Perfect. Wasn't bad enough that it's death defying scary areas they have to go up and down like ravines and shit, but no. You don't know how to drive? It's fine. You'll work it out.
It's fine. Don't worry.
17 men in 6 cars in total participated in the race, including journalists to document the journey and mechanics to fix the cars, which would inevitably break down. The participants were a smorgasbord of personalities, including but not limited to. You're giving me names that I can't pronounce. Okay, but not limited to Kaitlyn,
Gilles Bolsier de Saint-Chaffré.
who had once organized a boat race in which every boat sank. Oh, great.
Yeah.
Hans Hendrik Hensen, who claimed that his team would get to Paris or our bodies will be found inside the car. And
That's true.
Antonio Scarfolgili?
Scarfoglio.
Starfoglio. Yep, I
Yeah.
butchered that one. And Antonio Scarfoglio, who threatened to take a motorboat solo across the Atlantic if his father didn't allow him to participate in the New York to Paris race. As you can
Hmm.
surmise, such a mixture of personalities would eventually lead to a very interesting race.
Yes. So there were just so everybody knows, so there were 6 teams. 3 from France, 1 from Germany, and 1 from Italy. So I'm just gonna say the names of the teams and then plus who the members were. Also, the team names depend on like what car they were driving. So
Oh.
basically, yeah, so basically these like different car manufacturers like put up their own teams and they were sponsored by like various rich people. So first one, Team Protos. So they were driving a Protos vehicle. Whatever that is doesn't exist anymore. But they're from Germany, and their members were Hans Keppen, who was, I think, some kind of like military command, like he was like lieutenant something.
Hmm.
Ernst Maas and Hans Nape. Next, we have César Naudin from France, which had Auguste Pons, Maurice Bell, and Lucien Deschamps. And then there was Team de Dion, which was from France, with Gilles Bolsier de Saint-Chaffré, Alphonse Autrin, and Hans Hendrik Hansen, who Hans Hendrik Hansen was actually from Norway, but
Mm.
he was hired as a kind of navigator. Like he was supposed to navigate through like Siberia and all the wintry bullshit that they had to go through.
I was gonna say
There's
Hans does not sound like a French name to me. I was like, that sounds like
no,
Swedish.
yeah, yeah, he's from Norwegian. That guy.
That
Uh,
area.
and then there was the Thomas Flyer, USA, USA. And the members were George, my boy George Schuster, Monty Roberts, and Harold Brinker. Then there was Team Zust from Italy, and that was Giulio Sirtori, Henri Haga, and then Antonio Scarfoglio. And then finally we had Team Motobloc, which was also from France, and the members was Charles Godard, Arthur Hugh. That doesn't sound French at all. And Maurice Livier.
Hey man, it may not sound very French, but you did them all justice. Whereas I would have just destroyed
Thank you.
each and every single one of those names. So,
Thank
a
you.
round of applause for Kaitlyn, everybody! A round of applause for Kaitlyn!
Yay!
Yay!
Yeah.
Exactly. On February 12th, 1908, some 250,000 people were jammed into the Times Square area of New York City to witness the beginning of the race. More lined the street up Broadway and into Harlem to try and catch a glimpse of the cars and their drivers. The mayor at the time, George B. McKellen Jr., was supposed to fire the starting pistol, but he was late as usual. Eventually, some dude walked over to the table, grabbed the gun, and fired it instead. A superstitious person might say that that was an omen warning of events to come. Oh
Mm.
boy.
Yes. So the first to quit was Auguste Pons of César Naudin after a differential broke a mere 96 miles into the race. At first, the teams got along with each other more or less and formed little groups to help each other through the deep snow as they traveled through the Midwest. Remember, this is happening in 1908, and mechanical snow plows weren't widely used until the 1920s.
Hmm.
The teams got through the snow at an agonizingly slow pace by placing boards on the ground in front of the car. After the car had passed over the board, someone, usually the mechanic, would grab the board and move it in front of the car again. So place, drive, repeat. um, you can imagine that was
That's.
like number one, very very hard work, like back-breaking work, and then like number
Mhm.
two, like super slow.
I mean, I don't know why they didn't just go down to the south where there's like very little to no snow during the wintertime.
I mean,
But
yeah, you could almost probably take the same amount of time if they just, yeah, went down and around. But
hmm
no,
yeah,
that's too easy. Can't do
to
that.
each their own, I guess.
Mm,
Just gonna plow straight across. It's fine. The Amer- the American public were not too welcoming or helpful to the foreign teams either. While traveling through the countryside, the Mont- Moto Block and
hmm
Protos teams were taken for a ride by locals whenever they needed supplies, labor, or horses to pull the cars out of the muck. That's
mm.
what you get. That's what you get for calling folks boorish and peasants, I guess. Meanwhile, people were volunteering left and right and center to help out the Thomas Flyer.
Yeah,
Here you
a lot
go.
of these guys. Well, as you can imagine, like this race is taking like a very long time. So the people who are participating in it are like rich guys. Um,
hmm
and they're just like, oh, the peasants, I hate them. I hate the American peasants. I don't know why it went a little Russian there at the end, but
So good.
yeah.
But
So
yeah, no, I
Americans
know
did
I can
not
I can
like them.
totally see that. Like, yeah, and also Americans are at that point we're like, British are bad, French also bad. They always snub their
Hmm.
noses at us. So we're gonna thumb our noses back at them and be like, screw you guys.
So on March 8th, a bit of drama occurred when Hans Hendrik Hansen, who had been previously working for the Didion team, switched sides and started riding with the Americans.
Ooh.
Apparently, Hansen and Saint Chaffrey started arguing after Hansen couldn't get the car out from a snowdrift. They became so heated that they almost dueled. But Saint Chaffrey decided to fire him instead. Probably a bad move since Hansen was an expert on traveling in the Arctic, an asset to have on any team. So the Americans took advantage of the situation and welcomed him with open arms. So
You
nice.
know, that this was happened a long time ago when they almost dueled.
Yeah, they
Nobody
almost
duels
dueled.
anymore. I love it. Uh, the Americans were leading by a lot, and Monty Roberts decided that it was a good time to leave his team. He was going to Paris to drive in the Grand Prix there, and it was planned for Brinker to take over. Brinker and Roberts were no doubt the stars of the team, both being professional drivers, and Brinker having just survived a very deadly and public crash. But the true gem of the team was Schuster. He poured his
Mm.
heart and soul into the car and sacrificed sleep and comfort to keep the car running smoothly. He once walked 10 miles in the night while others were sleeping to get gas. He was definitely incredibly important and underappreciated.
So around that time, or around the time the Thomas Flyer left Wyoming, the other cars were quite a ways behind them, and the Motobloc was in serious trouble. Godard, desperate, chose to ship the car via rail to San Francisco in violation of the rules. He was caught by a photographer covering the race and was ordered by the car's owners to quit the race and return to France. Au revoir, Motobloc. Adieu.
Don't
That
let the
means
door hit your ass
goodbye.
on the way out.
Yeah.
So once in San Francisco, the Thomas Flyer was loaded onto a boat and shipped to Seattle and then to Alaska. Allegedly, Brinker
hmm
wanted to continue on with the team, his leg of the driving having concluded, but Schuster refused, probably because he was sick of carrying Brinker's dead weight. The, the team was met with much fanfare and cheering. No one had expected any of the cars to make it across America in winter, but the Americans had made it.
Yay!
Yay!
But unfortunately, the Americans eventually lost their lead after they arrived in Alaska and found it to be impossible to cross by car. The race committee decided that the team should sail to Vladivostok, Russia, from Seattle instead. While they were busy figuring out visas and traveling back from Alaska, the other teams had arrived on the West Coast and were on their way to Russia. To make things fair, the organizers awarded an allowance of 15 days to the Americans, which means that if they arrived in Paris less than 15 days after the other teams, they would still be declared the winner.
Hmm.
As a bonus, Protos was penalized an additional 15 days for loading their car onto a train. So they did
Cheaters.
it too. Yeah, cheaters.
That's all right.
So,
But yeah, no,
eh,
Alaska driving a car across Alaska is not even feasible nowadays in the wintertime. Like
mm.
once the snow sets in, it's all snowmobiles and dog sleds or you walk.
Well, that's what it was. So like Schuster got up there and he did some investigating and that's what he concluded was that you'd have to disassemble the cars and load up the parts on separate dog sleds and that was the only way they were
hmm
going to get across Alaska. So they were just like, "Skip it. We're taking boats."
Exactly. Best way to
Mm.
do it. She's like, nope, fuck this. We're out of here. So every team faced a rude awakening upon setting foot on Russian soil. Siberia had no roads and even less gas. Saint-Chaffrey?
Oh yeah,
Nope.
good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Summoned
that's good.
everyone to his room and tried to bribe the teams with gas in return for a spot on their rosters. Schuster
Yeah.
told him that told him he'd think about it, but then told his team he would not accept.
Saint-Chaffrey.
Gave all of his gas to the Italian team, but did not continue the race as he was ordered home by his sponsor, the Marquis Jules Albert de Dion.
Mm.
Yeah, de Dion was Dagon.
So the
I'm
three
sorry.
remaining teams. No, it's good. It's good. The three remaining teams, Protos, Zust, and the Thomas Flyer, inched through Siberia. The snow made it difficult to travel, and it was almost impossible to secure supplies. Many teams drove their cars on the railroad tracks and were nearly taken out by trains or by not so friendly Russian locals. Schuster received a telegram when he had reached Perm, Russia, asking if he wanted Monty to come back and help with the driving once he arrived in Europe. Schuster was pissed. He hadn't driven through the worst of the race just to hand the reins over to Monty, so he refused. Unfortunately, Schuster kept getting lost in Russia and lost his lead to Protos. The Italians were so far behind that they weren't even worth thinking of.
And Schuster was on the Italian team, or no? He's on the American team. Yeah,
He's the American team, yeah. He's the mechanic turned driver turned the best person in this whole race.
right.
Yeah, he's the
At
best.
6:15 p.m. on July 26th, 5.5 months after the start of the race, and 21,933 miles from Times Square, the Protos arrived in Paris. At the moment, Schuster was having breakfast in Berlin, comforted by the knowledge that he had actually won the race thanks to the 15-day allowance he had received and the 15-day penalty Protos got for hopping the train in America. Schuster finally made it to Paris 4 days later on July 30th, but it wouldn't be an interesting ending without a twist. While driving peaceably down the street, what is that?
Gendarme.
Grenade? Gendarme?
Gendarme.
Gendarme?
Yeah.
Okay, so while driving peacefully down the street, a gendarme stopped the car and declared, "You're under arrest." The headlights on the car were out, and the Thomas Flyer was committing a grave sin by driving on the streets illegally like that. Observers tried to explain that the car was participating in an important race, but the officer was having none of it. Finally, the solution came in the form of a boy who placed his bike, which had a headlight, in the front passenger seat next to Schuster. Apparently, that's good enough, and the gendarme allowed the car to continue. Okay.
Yay! Isn't that weird?
That's so dumb. I love it. You can't drive your car here. You have no headlights. How dare you? So scandalous. Hey, sir, do you want to borrow my bike? Oh
It
my
is
God.
okay. How is that okay?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh man, yeah. And then the Italians eventually rocked up sometime in September. I think it was like they
Wow.
finally made it to Paris on September 8th. So yeah, it was like a few months later. Whatever. So the Americans, yeah, the Americans in the Thomas Flyer officially won the race by a lead of 26 days, the biggest lead in racing history. Schuster humbly returned to his factory job where he was promised employment for as long as the factory was operational. And then it shut down 5 years later.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Ain't that how it goes though?
Oh man, it certainly is. Well, that's the end of our story for today. Hopefully you feel inspired to do a little road trip of your own.
Hopefully one that actually has roads in it though. Although, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
It's
I
really hard
can't
to find an
imagine.
area that does not have roads now.
Yeah, these days, yeah, there's usually
Hmm.
something that you can use, or at least like at least like a little
Ooh,
forest
you know
path or
what you could
something.
do?
Mm.
Go to Alaska and travel from Anchorage to Barrow straight up the center. Don't deviate and go around to like Fairbanks or any of those other ones. No, no, no. You go from Anchorage straight up through the center to Barrow, which is at the top. Barrow,
It,
Alaska. Oh yeah.
it, is that do people do that?
No.
Oh,
So there you go. You'd have
you
the
could be
whole
the
experience of
first.
having no roads. Ta-da!
Yay!
Unless you
Oh my
followed the
god.
pipeline, and then that technically be cheating, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that would be cheating. That's too easy.
It's too easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard so when I was researching this story too, I heard that like another person on another team, because one of the guys was actually in the Peking to Paris race,
hmm
um, and he kept stealing gas. Like, yeah, he would be like, "Oh, I'll pay you later," and then he just like never paid anybody for the gas. So he actually, whenever they arrived, I think he was on the Italian team or something.
hmm
But when they arrived in Paris, he got arrested.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Payback's a
Uh,
bitch. You didn't pay for your gas. Now you gotta pay.
you're gonna pay in jail,
Ha ha ha.
indentured servitude. But
Suck
yeah,
up.
I think yeah, it's a pretty fun story. Yeah, and
It's
it
more
took
it's
it
more
took
fun than my
something.
story.
Oh,
No, my road trip story that we did earlier on this year, where I was like, "Yep, I did a thing, and then
ah,
I did another thing." Yep. Hmm.
yeah. My road trip story was well, my road trip story was from quite a few years ago now, but it was moderately eventful. Actually, we had some events.
I think it's
It,
road trips are more fun and more eventful when you have more than one person in the vehicle. When it's just you and your car, eh,
yeah,
eh, it's fine.
that's true.
Like you can't have those lovely moments like you did when you passed through Illinois.
Illinois is more like Ill-quiet.
It gets me every time.
I know every time,
Every
every
time.
time I cannot like every time, yeah, every time I go through or I hear the word Illinois, I always think more like Ill-quiet because there's
I
nothing there.
right. Ever since you told me that joke, that's literally every time. I literally hear that every time. I'm like, oh yeah, I live in Illinois. More like quiet. I can't do the accent, but it's still good.
I know. We were losing our minds. If you liked this content, please like, comment, or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this on.
Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at Get Over It.
We also have a Patreon where we post extra behind the scenes comments and answer AMAs. All proceeds collected will be donated to the Center of Reproductive Rights and Cool Earth. Link in the description.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in next month.
See you then.
Toodaloo.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in.
And as always, please support this work by subscribing and donating to our cause at www.teamgetoverit.com.
Donors get access to specific content like stickers, t-shirts, and postcards from our journey.
You can donate for as little as $5 and the benefits build from there.
Go to our website for more info, or find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Team Get Ovary It.
Thanks for listening, and catch us next time on Get Over It. Doesn't being an adult suck?
Yeah, it does suck. Being adult sucks, but I just had chocolate for breakfast, so it's not all bad.
Oh boy.
You have to say it. You have to say it in an Italian accent. You have to go Scipione Borghese.
Saprone Borghese.
Perfect. This is a French one. You got to say it in a French accent. J. Boursier de Saint-Chaffrey.
What is that? Jardam?
Yeah.
America.